afternoon, I'm Mai Rodriguez. Today on Newsfeed at noon, global pushback after the U.S. joins Israel's war against Iran. The Philippine government echoing calls for de-escalation. U.S. President Donald Trump not backing down as he floats the possibility of regime change in Iran. Tehran is now threatening American bases in the Middle East. The PDP Laban files a petition before the Supreme Court for a manual recount of this year's senatorial race. And the Oklahoma City Thunder bags its first NBA title in 17 years. Stay out of the war, that call from protesters around the globe after the U.S. bombed 3 nuclear facilities in Iran. 7 B-2 bombers flew for 18 hours from America to drop 14 bunker buster bombs last Saturday. This marks a major escalation of the conflict between Israel and Iran, which began earlier this month after Israel launched a surprise attack targeting Iran's nuclear facilities. Demonstrators rallied outside the White House in Washington, D.C., stressing that U.S. involvement was necessary.
We are outraged with the Trump attacks on Iran. It's unprovoked. Iran poses no threat to us. It's unconstitutional. He never went to Congress. It's against international law. And it's unnecessary because they were in negotiations. The negotiations would have worked. Of course, they did work when Obama signed the agreement and Trump pulled us out of it. But there is no reason to have this war. And plus, we're just terrified that this could become World War III. This could become a nuclear war.
Iranians have their own corrupt rulers to deal with. They don't need our corrupt rulers dropping bombs on them. And just as the Iranian people are not the same as the Iranian government, I hope the world knows that the American people are not the same as this government.
Hundreds also marched through New York, criticizing the close ties between the U.S. and Israel. They also questioned why officials are ignoring the fact that civilians are being killed.
We recognize this as another war, as an excuse to plunder resources, a war that will see millions dead, just like our involvement in Iraq, a war of aggression perpetuated by 2 nuclear powers, the United States and Israel, who deeply ironically claim that Iran is the aggressor in the region because of a civilian nuclear program, when in reality the United States is the only country that has ever used nuclear weapons in war.
Rallies were also held in multiple other cities like Paris and Tokyo, opposing the U.S. strikes and calling for an end to the war altogether. Pope Leo also appealing for diplomacy and peace during the weekly prayer from St. Peter's Square. The American pontiff called the situation in Iran alarming. Leo said the war must end before it becomes an irreparable abyss. Aside from Iran, he also reminded the international community of the suffering still being faced by the people in Gaza. The Philippine Foreign Affairs Department greatly concerned over the war in the Middle East. The agency urges concerned parties to take the path of diplomacy and avoid further escalation. It adds the welfare and safety of Filipinos in the region are of primordial concern, and that the Philippine government will relentlessly continue to advance and prioritize their protection. More than 250 Filipinos in Israel have asked for repatriation. 127 of our kababayans there lost homes. On Billionaire News channels at the forefront, DFA Undersecretary Eduardo de Vega says that the first batch of repatriated OFWs from Israel, now in Jordan, are expected to arrive tomorrow. He also stresses the government is making sure that Filipinos are safe from the U.S. strikes.
We had long been calling for de-escalation of tension. The important thing is the safety of kababayans. And at the very least, we don't have kababayans who were injured. There are no kababayans in those areas. And the embassy in Tehran is saying, well, if there are, nananawagan sila, come to the embassy, take shelter at the embassy. But there are none.
The conflict in the Middle East reaching the UN as the Security Council holds an emergency meeting. There, Iran's ambassador condemned U.S. involvement in the war and warned of repercussions. Russia also denouncing America's attacks on Iran's nuclear facilities, saying these could plunge the world into a nuclear crisis. But Washington says Iran poses a growing threat, while Israel accuses Tehran of using diplomacy to stall while it developed nuclear weapons.
Iran has long obfuscated its nuclear weapons program and stonewalled good faith efforts in recent negotiations. Madam President, the time finally came for the United States, in the defense of its ally and in the defense of our own citizens and interest, to act decisively. The Iranian regime cannot have a nuclear weapon. Let us be clear. Iran should not escalate.
All U.S. allegations against Iran are unfounded, with no legal basis and politically motivated.
Russia, China, and Pakistan have drafted a resolution calling for an immediate ceasefire and a return to negotiations. It remains unclear when the measure might be put to a vote. Iran threatening U.S. bases in the Middle East in response to Washington's attacks on its nuclear sites. Tehran says all bases used by American forces to strike Tehran in the region or elsewhere are now legitimate targets. Iran also warns U.S. involvement in its war with Israel will have irreparable consequences. The U.S. has its own warning to Iran. Washington cautions Tehran against retaliating, saying U.S. forces will defend themselves and take action if necessary. The Pentagon adds Iran should instead return to negotiations on its nuclear program.
The most powerful military in the world is postured and prepared to defend our people. But what the president gave us, as I said, was a focused, powerful, and clear mission on the destruction of Iranian nuclear capabilities. As the president put out last night, he wants peace. There needs to be a negotiated settlement here. We ultimately demonstrated that Iran cannot have a nuclear capability. That is a very clear mission set on this operation.
The defense chief also says the U.S. mission is not about regime change in Iran. But on Truth Social, President Donald Trump appears to hint this remains a possibility. He also says the U.S. attacks had caused monumental damage to Iran's nuclear facilities. In other news, here at home, PDP Laban files a petition before the Supreme Court seeking a manual recount of this year's senatorial race. Let's get details from Joash Malimban, joining us now on the line. Joash, go ahead.
That's right, Mai. The PDP Laban has now taken to the Supreme Court to ask for a manual recount of votes in the 2025 senatorial race. According to their legal counsel, Attorney Israelito Torion, the petition stems from reports of alleged anomalies and irregularities in the recent midterm elections. Joining him at the Supreme Court was Attorney Jimmy Bondok, who ranked 17th in the senatorial race. Bondok insisted that the petition is not about securing a Senate seat, but about upholding the rule of law.
Ayos lang linawin ha. Marami kasing siguradong magre-react na ito ay aming pagnanasa na umupo. Wala pong ganyan. Ang gusto lang po namin ay ma-implement yung batas. Pinaglalaban po namin rule of law and not seat of power.
This move follows the earlier statements of Vice President Sara Duterte, who claimed that three other PDP Laban candidates, Bondok, J.B. Hinlo, and Richard Mata, should have won in the elections. Duterte said she consulted IT experts who reportedly found anomalies in the results. The party had also filed a separate petition last April questioning the legitimacy of internet voting for overseas Philippine workers, a voting sector that favored PDP Laban based on Comelec data. Mai.
George, has the Commission on Elections reacted to the petition?
Mai, so far it has not yet replied, but the poll body has maintained that the elections were generally peaceful and orderly. Random manual audits conducted by the COMELEC in coordination with the DepEd and other civil society groups showed at least 99% accuracy in the results produced by the automated counting machines. Mai.
Thank you for that report, Joash Malimban. Vice President Sara Duterte only has until today to respond to the summons given to her by the Senate Impeachment Court. Hannah is monitoring developments at the Senate, and she joins us now for the latest. Hannah, should we expect a reply from the VP?
Yes, Mai, halfway through the day and there's still no response or reply from Vice President Sara Duterte's camp. There's no confirmation yet if she plans to file a reply to the Senate Impeachment Court. And the Senate has given her 10 days to answer the summons after she officially received it on June 12. If she fails to respond by midnight, the court may declare her in default, meaning she loses her right to defend herself. Former Senate President Franklin Drilon said in a radio interview, this opens the door for the impeachment trial to move forward without the vice president's side. He adds the court's judgment can only be based on the evidence presented by the prosecutors. But what if VP Sara misses the deadline, then changes her mind? Outgoing Senate Majority Leader Francis Tolentino says only the current Senate or the 19th Congress can issue a declaration of default. But her camp can still file a motion to lift that order if there are strong enough reasons. Duterte's 16-man defense lawyers earlier filed an entry of appearance ad cotelem, signaling intent to join the proceedings but with reservations. Senate Impeachment Court spokesperson Reginald Tonggol earlier said this type of pleading often precedes a motion to dismiss, a possible move as the vice president continues to challenge the court's jurisdiction in her pending Supreme Court cases. The impeachment charges against her include betrayal of public trust and culpable violation of the Constitution. And even if the Senate does not conclude the trial this Congress, it can move the proceedings to the 20th, as earlier mentioned by the Senate Impeachment Court. Mai?
Hannah, any chance that today's deadline could be extended?
Mai, Tonggol earlier mentioned that today is the deadliest deadline and it's non-extendable. And because of the entry of appearance ad cotelem of VP Sara's camp, Tonggol earlier said he's expecting they will file either a motion to dismiss the case or an answer questioning the jurisdiction of the Senate Impeachment Court. Back to you, Mai.
Thank you, Hannah T, reporting to us live from the Senate. The deadline comes as Vice President Sara Duterte remains in Australia. While there, she defended her frequent foreign trips and explained her decision to once again skip President Bongbong Marcos's upcoming SONA. The details from Joan Manalo.
I don't think he will be providing anything substantial about our country.
Vice President Sara Duterte remains firm in her decision not to attend President Bongbong Marcos' fourth State of the Nation address. This despite the House of Representatives extending an invitation for the event on July 28. The Vice President says she would rather engage with the Filipino community as she is currently in Australia for a series of events.
It would be best to spend that time with the Filipino community discussing what we can do for the country and to improve the country.
The OVP earlier confirmed that VP Sara will not be attending the SONA, but this is the first time she has publicly stated her reason. Duterte also responded to the palace's earlier statement questioning her frequent foreign trips, with Palace Press Officer Claire Castro asking whether they were for personal or public interest.
I do not like traveling at all except for holidays. And clearly, I am not on holiday for this trip. I am here to discuss with the Filipino community on ways forward for our country. And of course, how we can push the administration to do more for our country. And the Philippine government should not discount the contributions of the Filipino communities worldwide.
The Vice President is expected to return to the Philippines for the Kasarilaayan event in San Fernando, Pampanga on June 25. She also confirmed that her lawyers are now preparing a response to the Office of the Ombudsman after being ordered to submit a counter affidavit over the alleged misuse of confidential funds in both the OVP and the Department of Education, which she formerly led. VP Sara was given 10 days upon receipt to comply. Her office received the order on June 20. Joan Manalo, Billionario News Channel.
We're taking a break. Still to come, a blockbuster trade as Kevin Durant is reportedly heading to the Houston Rockets. That and more when Newsfeed at noon returns. President Bongbong Marcos inspects rehabilitation efforts in war-torn Marawi, including the city's sports and temporary learning spaces. For details, Ivy Reyes joins us on the line now. Ivy.
The president arrived at 9 a.m. here in Marawi, Lanao del Sur, to inspect Marawi Port, Marawi General Hospital, and schools and temporary learning spaces, or TLS. At Barangay Sagonsongan, the president sat with students and demonstrated the use of laptops. In this area, 5 different schools hold classes for about 720 students. These TLS centers were born out of the aftermath of the Marawi siege in 2017. A number of Starlink units were also distributed among these learning centers located in remote areas of Marawi. And school supplies were also provided by the Office of the President. The president then went straight to the Marawi Port, a project worth 261.5 million pesos. Prior to the port's development, a causeway for local fisherfolk was the only facility here. Now it has an 8,000-meter backup area, a single-story passenger terminal, a one-story fish port, berthing facilities, and a ro-ro ramp. The president's inspection in Lanao del Sur follows a series of transportation rehabilitation projects, just like the ongoing development of San Juanico Bridge. As of now, that's the latest here from Marawi. Mai.
Thank you for that report, Ivy Reyes. After repeated delays, the world's richest man, Elon Musk, has finally begun rolling out self-driving taxis. Tesla deployed a small fleet of robo-taxis in Austin, Texas, marking the first time its driverless cars are transporting paying passengers. The pilot program is limited to select areas of the city, with the rides costing a flat fee of $4.20. Musk called the launch the culmination of a decade of hard work. On to the world's second richest man. Preparations in Venice are in full swing for the wedding of Jeff Bezos and journalist Lauren Sanchez. The big day's exact venue and date have yet to be revealed, but it is expected to happen this week and will attract global celebrities and VIP guests. Security is being tightened for what is dubbed as the wedding of the century, but Venetians are divided over the event.
I think it is positive for Venice and for us Venetians. So I don't understand all these demonstrations against it. On the contrary, it brings beautiful people. It helps the city when it comes to bars and restaurants, and also the name of Venice in the world.
I think it's, I'm kind of with the locals. It seems like quite a bit of over-tourism, especially from the U.S. And, you know, if there's no local support, it really shouldn't the red carpet shouldn't be extended.
Bezos and Sanchez went public with their relationship in 2019 and became engaged in 2023. Now in sports, defense wins the crown. The Oklahoma City Thunder wins its first NBA title in 17 years. It's also the franchise's first since 1979, when it was still the Seattle Supersonics. OKC turned up the heat in the second half to bag an epic 103-91 win at home over a gritty Indiana Pacers in Game 7 of the finals. It forced 23 Pacers turnovers and converted those mistakes. The Thunder surged to an 89-68 lead in the fourth after holding every Pacer except TJ McConnell scoreless since the 8:32 mark of the third. A late 11-1 Pacers run in less than 3 minutes closed the gap, but only briefly, before Oklahoma slammed the door shut. Season MVP Shai Gilgeous-Alexander led the Thunder with 29 points and 12 assists. Indiana's injured Tyrese Halliburton, their miracle man, went down in the first 7 minutes of the game on a suspected torn Achilles. Trade season has yet to begin, but it appears Kevin Durant is on the move again. ESPN reports Durant is headed to the Houston Rockets. The Phoenix Suns are reportedly receiving Dylan Brooks, Jalen Green, plus 6 player options in the upcoming draft. The move marks Durant's 5th NBA team with stops in OKC, Golden State, Brooklyn, and Phoenix. And this IG post by CBS Sports show, Durant has completed the rainbow jersey following Shaquille O'Neal. And Filipino tennis sensation Alex Ayala is off to the main draw of the Eastbourne Open in the UK. Even better, she has moved up 3 rungs in the rankings ladder to number 74 after earning her main draw slots in the past 3 tournaments. Ayala faces world number 61 Italian Lucia Bronzetti in the round of 32 at 6 p.m. today, Philippine time. In the qualifiers Sunday, the now women's world number 74 overcame a 1-set deficit to beat 56-ranked Hailey Baptiste of the U.S. in 3 sets. Ayala defeated her Turkish opponent in the first of 2 qualifier rounds the day before. The Rafa Nadal Academy graduate is set for her main draw debut at Wimbledon later this month. And those are the news this hour. I'm Mai Rodriguez. Stay with the Billionaire News Channel. Good afternoon.